Well, it's a really lovely evening here on the 29th of April 2025. Sun is shining over there, but not. It's clouded out a bit by clouds. And if you listen, you'll hear the birds singing. So that's the birds singing here in rural Ireland, and the grass is beginning to grow. It's very pleasant. It's not really warm like it would be in Italy or California or that, but it's nice. It's nice, and there's a green vibrancy in the plants. And here is a sycamore leaf of a small sycamore tree, and you see the very vibrant colours, typical springtime. Anyway, thank you for your comments on the earlier videos about the blackouts in Spain and about the different types of motors and the electronics and electricity, how it works on motors, and your good comments there. But one of the things that's moving so fast in the world, you wouldn't know where it'll all end, is this situation in Ukraine. And I know some of you may be sick of it, but I'll try and keep this short. It won't be that long. So essentially, you know that the Ukraine war was due to American intervention in Europe where it had no right to be. And that intervention was not fully backed by the EU as such. The EU might have moved to try and bring peace a little earlier, but it's not so sure. We know that when the invasion took place, Victoria Nuland did everything she could to stop any agreement, but Boris Johnson, the British ex-Prime Minister, flew over and stopped any negotiations. So that tells us a little bit. We didn't really see that with France or Spain or Italy or Germany even, or Ireland, but that's what happened anyway. Now, there was one big narrative, and I suspect that there is such a thing as a deep state. There is the World Economic Forum, but there's also other elites that our politicians, they feel inferior. They have an inferiority complex, and they love to have some big lad or big one to tell them what to do. Victoria Nuland isn't necessarily one of them to influence Europe. Klaus Schwab would, big time. But all these big elites anyway, and Peter Sutherland, the late Peter Sutherland was one here in Ireland. Our government and the government of many places is in awe of them. And this narrative was commenced that Russia must not be allowed to win. Russia must not be allowed to win. Simple. And these type of people, and I know them well, I work with them, and I was often got lectures from them, particularly in my time in the Irish police and in the education system. They were drumming it in. They made this decision: we have to beat Putin. But when they made that decision, they were counting on the United States as being the big overall brother there that would look after everything. And they played themselves with the climate change racket and renewable energy racket that I talk about. And they played themselves with the LGBTQ and all this stuff, and extreme gay activity and stuff that wasn't really built into the heart of the European or the American people. So they were out of line a bit. So anyway, the war took place, and you know where it is now. And the next thing is Trump gets into power. Now, Trump went after them for tariffs. And that was a danger signal because America was the main point of NATO. And that Khaled one from, is it Estonia, I think she's from, or Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, I think she's Estonia. She's mad anti-Russian, and there is huge anti-Russian feeling in parts of Europe. But that's not the way to form a policy. So the next thing was Trump went and spoke by phone to Putin, and they began to realize that there was a risk that he'd go it alone. He's meeting Putin through his staff, and there's negotiations, and Europe has not the capacity to talk to Russia. Whatever way they're mentally adjusted, they cannot talk to the Russians. But it's going ahead anyway. So then you see that there's a danger now from the European perspective of America and Russia making it up and getting rid of sanctions, and them stuck in Europe with the bill for the money they took of Russia. And I believe 260 billion of that is in Europe, as my best information that I can get. And there's about 120 billion, 130 in the United States. There's a sufficient amount of it in Europe, and that board is really having a good time there. The Europe was fully expecting to be compensated out of the Russian money seized. So that is a serious scare, because that money is gone. It's gone. They don't have it. So whoever loaned that money is going to be looking for the money back of Europe, and Europe has guaranteed it, but America is not going to go along in the seizing of that money. So without American courts to enforce it, where are you going to enforce it? Now, so that brings a new perspective, that I predict you will see a dropping of European interest in Ukraine. Right? They're all about boots on the ground. They wouldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. They want their own military. Take about 5 years to get geared up. They have to reverse all their industrial destruction, reverse their entire climate change stuff, their renewable energy. They have to reverse the whole thing, take them a long time, and by the time that happens, a lot of them won't be there at all. So that brings into perspective another huge scare. I said before in a video, and I got good praise for it, that the Europeans have more to worry or more to fear from their own members, the EU and Britain, than it has from any other country, including Russia. And now look at the prospect. Supposing some kind of a peace deal is forced on Ukraine, and they'll be lucky to get away with keeping the Crimea, with Russia keeping the Crimea and the few Donbass and all those. They'll be lucky if Russia doesn't plough on and take Odessa. And there's every likelihood Putin will say, well, we're not getting any peace deal, we'll mow on. And he might even decide to march on Kiev. If he made a full frontal assault on Kiev, where would Zelensky go? Because he wants Zelensky and his mob rooted out of Ukraine. No doubt about it. So, supposing that happens, supposing even that the status quo remains, that Ukraine gets nothing back, supposing that happens, what's the next scare for the EU? Well, the next scare is NATO as such would cease to exist. There'd be no real NATO as such. How can you have NATO without the United States? Who's going to issue the orders? Right now, if there's a war and NATO moves in, the United States generals take command of the whole thing. The British, the Germans, the French, all of them will take their orders from the Americans. But will the French take their orders from the British? Will the British take their orders from German generals? And this is the big problem. So, as Trump imposes tariffs on them and appears not to be such a good boy as they thought, they run the risk that Ukraine will be sorted, that Russia will calm down, that they'll be looking there and there's very little they can do. Who's going to rebuild the Ukraine? Will it get back into the EU? It will not get back into NATO. Not one troop, soldier from anywhere outside of Ukraine will be tolerated by Russia. They've made that clear. Russia may plough on to take over more territory, depending. And then, if you can think of it, that in a year's time from now, that's the situation, where does that leave NATO? There'll be no NATO, or only a sham. But I don't think Russia's going to take advantage by invading. I think they're safe enough there, but they don't think that. Well then, the next thing is, where does it leave the EU? And I believe right now, the focus has moved from saving Ukraine to saving the EU. And there's a strong persuasion going on to get Keir Starmer to reapply and get back into the EU before he's booted out of office in 3 years' time. So the thing to watch for, see, will there be a reduction in the intensity of EU's fight against Russia and EU's interest in the Ukraine, or Ukraine, whichever you call it? Will they lose interest? I'd say they have very short fuses. I'd say that after a while, when they see they're getting nowhere, they'll turn to something else. They'll probably turn back to climate change. I can't see them rearming and reindustrialization. I don't know. I won't say that very strongly, but it'll take too long. This time next year is nothing for Putin and his Russian people. It's a long time for Europe. And so what you'll see Europe doing is cutting out all our rights, taking all the spare cash out, taking away all rights to free speech, the human rights that we would take for granted. They'll do everything on the grounds that it's necessary to defeat Russia. Up to now, it was we have to do it because of climate change. Now it's even more so. We have to take your money. We have to have a digital currency. We have to have total control. And we'll be locked on this plot of ground in Europe, and we won't be able to do anything about it. Meanwhile, the American people will be glad to be rid of us. They'll be glad to be shut of us. Most of them don't know where France is, where Switzerland is. They couldn't pick it out on a map. What had stood for a long time will vanish. They're more interested in other places. The Philippines, Vietnam, maybe even again from industrial purposes. Africa, the goodies of Africa, the gold and the oil that Russia is taking from France, could they get a bit of that back? They have no interest in Europe. There's nothing in Europe for anybody, including us. There's nothing, because we are a continent of voting idiots, right? We have movements against them. There is certain, as they call, right-wing movements, but I don't see there being enough. You'd need to have 50% of the people on our side, and there isn't. So you have voting idiots electing idiotic governments, doing idiotic things. And they are scared, and the wits are scared out of them. They have no concept of proper democracy, proper human rights or anything, and they have destroyed democracy by taking away our rights for the environment, as I've explained to you before. And they are scared. And maybe they have a right to be. They're facing irrelevance. Unfortunately for we people living here, or us people, or whatever you like to call it, we're not going to be relevant either, because they'll leave us that we will not be able to do the basic things in our lives. We won't be allowed to heat ourselves, heat our homes. We won't be allowed mechanical transport. Everything will be dished out by Ursula von der Leyen. And that one has no intention of going anywhere. Not for the next at least 10 years. She's going to hold on there, and I guarantee you the next and the one after European Parliament will vote her back in again. That's the situation. For people elsewhere, they're very lucky. I think you'll see a reversal of what we used to have, the penny for the black babies, where Irish people were asked as wee boys going to school to give a penny. We'd be hungry ourselves for the black babies in Africa. It'll be the black babies in Africa will be giving their pennies to our grandchildren. That's what we've done. That is an alarming thing, really, when you think of it. But there you have it. I am only an observer. Only an observer. Good luck. We'll see you back soon. Thank you very much.